Hi, EJ here. Welcome back to NonCompete. This is a follow-up to our last video in which we discussed some of the ways in which liberals were using the signal leak scandal to run cover for American war crimes in Palestine and Yemen. You don't have to have seen that video to watch this one, but it would probably help you to get the deeper concepts that we're going to be talking about. So there's a link in the description. Give it a watch if you'd like. Otherwise, let's jump in. In this video, we're going to very briefly go over a new line of propaganda that is very much cut from the same cloth as the Signal Leaks Palestine war crime cover-up. Today, as the USA stumbles deeper and deeper into economic disaster, I've noticed dozens of liberal pundits, reporters, and deep-pocketed independent content creators latching on to the same narrative, that Trump is golfing during a military funeral.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, not Donald Trump, will attend the dignified transfer of 4 U.S. soldiers who died in Lithuania during a training exercise. Trump traveled to South Florida to attend the LIV golf tournament, which will take place at the Trump National Doral.
Our own president was not present to receive their remains in a ceremony known as the dignified transfer when they arrived at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth filled in for America's commander-in-chief, who chose instead to travel to Miami for a Saudi-funded LIV golf tournament at his own course.
While Trump is attending the Saudi-sponsored golf event at his golf course, he's missing, or skipping really, the dignified transfer of the bodies of 4 U.S. soldiers who died on a training mission in Lithuania.
Trump won't attend the dignified transfer of the 4 U.S. soldiers at Dover Air Force Base who died in Lithuania during a training exercise. Instead, he'll be at his Saudi-backed LIV golf tournament in Florida.
Look at what Trump was not doing, that he could have been doing instead. These 4 American soldiers who died in Lithuania, he skipped their dignified transfer.
Trump did indeed go golfing during a military ceremony in which the remains of 4 soldiers were transferred to the USA from Lithuania. Simultaneously, China has launched a devastating response to Trump's misguided universal tariffs by issuing not just massive tariffs of their own, but also barring Chinese companies from investing in the USA. And this is a big deal. Few people realize how much money is invested in the USA by Chinese firms and how much American capital depends on this money. There are many other huge stories going on while Trump's golfing. Notably, countless innocent people have been rounded up and disappeared to a concentration camp in El Salvador with absolutely no due process whatsoever. But many liberals are focusing on this one angle that Trump is golfing during a military funeral. Narratives like these don't get derived and spread through happenstance alone. Liberals could have framed things any number of ways. They are consistently choosing to frame things in such a way that imperialism is both justified and glorified. Nobody questions why we have soldiers in Lithuania to begin with, nor whether it's worth it to sacrifice so many young lives for the agenda of the imperialist ruling class. Now, don't get me wrong, this was a tragedy and these lives should not have been lost. We should be paying attention to what's going on. But the way liberals are framing it is intended to make us pay attention to the wrong aspects of this situation. And it ultimately is an attempt to manufacture consent for American imperialism and potential warmongering. See, propaganda techniques like the ones I'm describing are marked by their subtlety. And when it comes to manufacturing consent and inventing perceptual reality, the whole idea is to get you to buy into things, to notice certain things and not others, and to have you come away with an emotional state and an opinion that was shaped by these agenda setters without you even realizing that you've been influenced. So that's why a lot of people in the comments of my last video said that, it was a huge stretch that we were saying that liberals were running cover for the war crimes in Yemen. But the whole point is to make it feel like a stretch when people point out what's actually going on. The whole point is to say things without saying them, to talk around things. It's a very indirect form of propaganda. So the only way to unravel it and get to the bottom of what's really going on and what the liberals are doing with these propaganda tactics is to look at the material reality of what's actually happening. Look at the motivations, look at who's benefiting from any particular situation, and then you can start to understand why and how these propaganda tactics are being applied. With this situation, framing it so that outrage is focused on Trump's lack of decorum over the military funeral takes your eye off the ball. The whole point is to get you so riled up over the lack of respect to these soldiers and their families that you don't ask questions about why they were in Lithuania to begin with. Why is our imperialist war machine spread so far and wide? Why do any soldiers have to lose their lives for this imperialist agenda? Ostensibly, American troops are deployed in Lithuania to deter Russian aggression as part of a NATO operation called Operation Atlantic Resolve. But we now know for a fact that the USA is not interested in Eastern Europe to protect it or to deter Russian aggression. The USA is in Eastern Europe to carve it up and plunder the region's national resources right alongside with Russia. This is no longer something that can be denied. The terms which the USA is seeking for Ukraine can only be described as a colonial project. In essence, Trump is demanding a scheme which would force Ukrainians to hand over virtually all mineral wealth to American corporations. Note that this money would not go to the American people nor the American government, not to the taxpayers, but to American corporations. These terms would ruthlessly exploit the people of Ukraine and devastate its natural environment. Generations of Ukrainians would become essentially colonial subjects to the USA. Luna, part of the NonCompete co-op, discussed this more in her most recent video over at her channel, so be sure to give that a watch if you haven't seen it already. And in the description of her video, you'll find a link to the proposal that America made for Ukrainians. You can read that for yourself and see just how heinous this proposed colonial project really is. So anyway, this is why American troops are in Lithuania. It's not to protect Lithuania or Ukraine. It's to project power into that region so that American capitalists can benefit. But liberals, controlled by the ruling class of capitalists, don't want you to see this reality. They want you to support the American neo-colonial project. So that's why they are framing Trump's day of plotting and scheming with Saudi Arabian capitalists on the golf course the way that they have. They want you to become emotionally defensive of the presence of America's oppressive military troops in foreign nations. They want you to be outraged over Trump's lack of decorum over the brutal consequences of American imperialism to prevent you from becoming critical of American imperialism. They want you to become emotionally invested in our criminal occupation of foreign nations. They are inventing a false reality, but you don't have to fall for it. If we as workers reject these narratives and oppose the imperialist agenda of the ruling capitalist class, we'll be that much closer to our own liberation. If you found this video useful or interesting, please subscribe. If you haven't seen the most recent video on this channel, check it out. It does go a lot deeper into this topic of manufacturing consent and inventing reality and propaganda and the role that liberals play in Trump's imperialist plans. That's all for now. I'm EJ. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Take care of each other.